custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work. That'd be with you.
And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant girl Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maidservant.
And that's it. Actually, I meant to go to verse 30. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban for another 7 years. So, verse 30.
You always get 2 for 1 here?
What's that?
We always get
Yeah,
This
2 for 1.
must be the first recorded payment plan.
Yeah. I think we all get it. Yeah. The old, this is what literally bait and switch here.
Are we seeing a setup of a time period here, shows another week, meaning 7 years? Well, a week was 7 days, but here we're calling a week.
Well, why don't we help Carl there? What is your interpretation of what actually happened here?
This is
7 years.
Laban's rental wife.
What's that?
Laban's rental wife. Got the wife up front, then he had to serve for another 7 years.
Yeah, he got
He got
my
the second
understanding.
wife up
Yeah,
after
yeah.
the
He
first.
just had to wait another week.
A
So,
week was 7 years ago.
But
Well-
the week here was a week of passion or something, whatever they had to
He had
do.
to-
Honeymoon.
He gave his daughter, and then he had to serve her. So we have 2 wives right there within a week.
yeah.
Oh, is that?
That's how I see it, is that there's 7 years and then the switch, 1 week of, quote, the honeymoon to fulfill his duty to his first wife, and then he granted, not he, did you notice he used the word we? We. What do you think about his, what do you think about his Laban's response? You know, the verse, why have you deceived me? Really keying in on that verse in verse 25, and Laban's response. How do you interpret how he responds?
You didn't have your cultural training before you arrived. Cross-cultural knowledge. He's a shyster, but.
Okay, so somebody else. What is that? What is that type of response? Let's go a little bit deeper. Yes, he appealed to the local culture as really the reason behind it. But what is that?
Well, you should have known. You should have known what we were doing. That's the way it works.
Yeah. You should have known.
He turned the blame around.
Yeah.
It's what?
He turned the blame around. He
Yeah, there's where.
blame and bingo.
Yeah.
Blame. I don't carry the blame. So.
Why have you deceived me right here? Well, let's just shift that a little bit. It's not me.
Didn't read the fine print.
It's not me. It's you. This is the way we do it. This is the way we do it here, or this is the way we don't do it here. This is what we must do here. Is this familiar? Have you ever seen this before?
Surely God didn't say nothing.
There you go. Well, Jim, yes, biblically, but God, guys, how many times have I been in a situation that it's tight, I start to feel the squeeze, and boy, let's find an escape route here. I'm not responsible. I'm not responsible. She is responsible, or he is responsible, or they are responsible, or the dog is responsible for eating my homework. There you go. See? This is where we live, guys. Yes, sir.
I think, Mike, I think this is still a cultural thing in many countries.
It could be, yeah.
A family in India that has an older daughter and 2 younger sons.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
It had to be, the older daughter had to get married first before the next one.
Yeah.
It was sort of a pecking order.
And of course, Laman's position is, you should have known that, Jacob. You should have known that. Well, there could have been other ways to deal with this, like
it part of the original deal.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I could see why they didn't make it part of the original deal because that's 7 years. You know, a lot can happen in 7 years. But as the time started to squeeze down, we get, 6 months to the wedding. It seems like there could have been some level of conversation like, Jacob, we have an issue here. I mean, isn't that the way we should operate? That when we are in the position of the no, that we should bring that painful data forward to be discussed?
Yeah, it was time for Laban to tell Jacob to read the fine print
Yeah,
in the
Yeah.
contract.
yeah. Yeah, do you think, well, let me throw that out. Do you think that's valid? Did Laban have a level of responsibility here to come forward prior to the switcheroo?
From our couple's perspective, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Poor lady.
I wonder why neither of the girls said anything.
Well, let's talk about that. What did everybody get here? Let's say what did Leah gain?
Good husband, or prospects to have a husband. We're kinda
She
low.
got a husband, and that's a big deal, especially in that culture. She got a husband. That's the only reasonable explanation of why she didn't, why she went along with the whole thing. She was part of the whole thing because of what she was going to gain. I think that's a reasonable explanation of why she was not silent, or why she was silent. Excuse me.
I'll disagree. She may
Okay.
have been, he said, if you want a husband, you're gonna have to do what I say. I mean, it could have been either way. I mean, she made me glad to get a husband. On the other hand, you don't buck dad.
Yeah.
And then Rachel had to be part of this too. because
Okay, what'd she
wasn't
get?
going into that. Well, she had to step aside for a while because she knew Jacob was expecting her to show up in the bedroom.
Yeah. I mean, they had a courtship, whatever that looked like at that time, and Dad came to her at some point and said, "Listen, this is what we're going to do. You're going to have to wait a week." But she gained.
But Leah couldn't have looked forward to the next morning when all this came to light.
I don't know.
Jeez,
Leah had a rough go.
Yeah.
Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. That's a whole nother. We'll probably get into that at some point. Okay, so we got two young brides. They each got a husband. What else did they get? They got the same husband.
It's an interesting mix of sort of what we almost take for granted culturally, is that people marry for reasons of love. Sort of juxtapositioned with a cultural norm, as I would read this, of arranged marriages,
Yeah.
where love is somewhat irrelevant, and the number of camels that are given in exchange for a bride is what really determines what's going to happen. And you've got both here in this story.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of theater to it.
It sure does. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then the maids, I mean, they're just going to be helpers. They're bed maids. They're my kids too.
I would assume so. Yeah, we'll get into that. But they got, at this point, each of the brides got a helper.
Yeah.
Got someone to help them with the house. So,
And the husband.
okay, and a husband. So they actually, in my opinion, life is good. I don't know how you interpret that with Leah because of the context of knowing Jacob loves Rachel best. But Jacob doesn't seem to be rejecting her because of the children that are going to be born. What did Laban get?
14 years of work.
He really came out great.
Yeah, rid of 2 daughters.
He got to marry off the one that had, I call some real prospects for getting, she was old.
Well,
She didn't really
yeah,
have
we
any
talked about that.
high prospects for getting married, so he was like,
So he got both. He got 2 daughters married for the price of 1 wedding.
yeah.
Yeah, you know about that.
Yeah. Yeah, he really turned out good. Plus, he had free labor for 14 years.
Well, wait a minute, but I don't know if Jacob, I'm sure Jacob's constantly pulling at the reins to go back home, but Esau's there, but he didn't come up so bad either. I mean, he did get 4 wives. He's got a lot of kids, it's good, you know.
But let's look at that though, Bill, in light of what did Jacob agree to? 1 wife for 7 years. Have you ever entered a deal and made a deal that's clear as all, 1 for 1? This is what I will do for you in exchange. I expect this, 1 for 1, or 1 for 7. Okay. But what did he get? 2 wives, 2 maids. I didn't put that up there. He got a week vacation. He got that week in between. And he got 14 years of service.
I forgot about that week of vacation, that's important.
Yeah, I mean, we're paid vacation. That's okay. So I'd like to go with this. Have you guys ever been in a situation where you've made an agreement at some level, the deal, here, and through a series of events that you have no idea how you got there, you know, like here's the question mark, you end up here. And you're asking yourself while you're scratching your head, how in the world did this happen? You've never had that happen, Dick? Oh, come on.
I think it's one of those things, well, I thought it was gonna be this way, the other person said, no, it's this way.
Well,
What you thought doesn't matter, that's the way it is.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, Laban had the upper hand. He was the elder in the situation, and that, you know, there's high respect of your elders, you know, you don't go against what they say, and so he was caught in that, I thought it was this way, and no, it's this way, that's all there is to it, so there's not much getting out of it or revising the deal or anything, it is what it is, and you're gonna have to step up and swallow the pill and blow the clock.
Well, that's one response, but I'd like to talk about that. Because guys, here's how I see it. That's supposed to be a fish hook and a worm on the fish hook. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, for my little Crayola drawing thing, you gotta, okay, that's the bait. Who is the bait? Rachel is the bait. Yeah. Who's the master fisherman here? We're in Laban's world. This is, right here, guys, this is, whoop, I did this wrong. This is Laban's world. Laban's world. We're in Laban's world. He's the master fisherman, and he sets the bait. Now, whether he did at the beginning, I really question. I think he sincerely loved Jacob. I think his intentions were good, but as time goes on and the pressure of the realities of real life, and you have 2 daughters and you have to, marry one off, I have no doubt that what he said about the culture was the practice of the day, but he operated in a less than honorable way as the pressure began to mount in his life. He diverted to what's easy. But
Is it reasonable to expect Jacob not to understand the customs?
Right.
I mean, it seems like he should have known, how things were done.
But this is Uncle Laban. This is his mom's brother.
Yeah.
His mom knows Uncle.
Yeah, I think there was plenty of opportunity to know here. Why it was never talked about is the answer to that question is why you and I never talk about the difficult times in our families. It's the same thing. Guys, we're all made of the same mud here. It's not them. How many times in our lives have we chosen not to face the difficult discussions because of pressure and fear? It's the same thing, guys. Yeah.
You know, 7 years, when Laban made this deal with Jacob, 7 years sounds like a long time. Now, he knows this other daughter has to be married first. Now, as it gets closer, I'm sure Mrs. Laban and Leah are telling, hey, Dad, you know, I'm not married, I gotta get married first.
Right.
And Mrs. Laban was probably very significant.
Yeah,
in this.
I mean, it was a...
And they said, well, we'll just nail him on the wedding night.
Well, that's how it boiled down, and that's exactly what happened. And Rachel became the bait. The setting the hook, of course, is the wedding night, and it was set up perfectly. And then, of course, the aftermath is that in the morning, Jacob awakened next to the wrong woman, next to a different woman, and he realizes, I'm caught. I'm caught. I'm caught. What do we do, gentlemen, when we wake up in the morning and all of a sudden we realize, I've been duped. I've been caught. I have been deceived. It doesn't feel real good. And there are two basic responses that you and I can make, and you and I do make, when that occurs in our lives. Only two. One is that we yield to that. The other is that we resist it and we fight it. There's only two responses. Now we're gonna look at this. I created this little matrix here based on this idea. When we're at that point, when you and I wake up one day, it could be a broken partnership. It could be a broken marriage. It could be a wayward teenager. It could be bad news from the doctor. It could be a number of different things. But when you and I wake up and we say, by golly, I've been duped. This is not fair. This is not fair. How do we respond? Well, we either ultimately yield to that or we resist it and fight it. And that's the vertical axis. The horizontal axis is that because of our personality makeup, we tend to go internal or we're very demonstrative. And so I created 4 quadrants here, and let me explain each. Box number 1 is down here. You see box number 1 down lower left-hand corner is that it's low, so it's yielding. It's low, not high. It's yielding and it's inward. And I'm calling that being conquered. I realize I'm caught. It's the fish hanging on the line and just, I'm caught. I'm dead. I'm caught. And it's inwardly yielding, okay? And that's conquered. I had to come up with a C word there.
Is that what you have the press conference?
That's when you have that's when you come clean, yeah. I'm caught. Yeah. Then on the second box is right above that is the idea of being conflicted. And what that means is that I'm yielding on the outside, but on the inside I'm not yielding at all. I'm resisting. Yeah. I may look like I'm yielding, but I'm not. My demeanor and my being is in conflict. Outside I'm sitting down, but inside I'm standing up. I'm resisting the idea.
As soon as I have
That's-
an out, I go.
What's that?
As soon as I have an out, I'm out of here.
Yeah. or as soon as I can get back, I will. Number 3, over to the right, is I'm in sync. You know, I'm outwardly combative or resisting, and I'm very demonstrative in my resistance. And my dad would have fit in this. I remember walking in. I think I've told you this story. One time he was in the hospital, and they were a nice young. She wasn't a nurse, but she was a staff counselor. Was in there with him, trying to convince him that it'd be a really good idea, Wendell, to stop smoking. And so I come walking in to see him visiting that evening, and I heard my dad's voice. Not only no, but hell no. But that was my dad. I mean, he was such a funny guy. But it's not going to happen. But at least he was cohesive, inwardly and outwardly combative. He's resisting. Then number 4 is compliant, where outwardly we're yielding, and let's see, but I'm yielding. How did I get that? Oh, I'm actually complying with what is going on. I'm okay. We'll do this. I'm demonstrative. I'm talking about it, and I will comply with the reality. Much like what you were saying, Carl. I'm being compliant here. Yeah.
That's different than conquer.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, it would be demonstrative. Combative is that I'm fighting back. I'm going to contrast it with combative. Compliant is I will agree to the terms.
But I'm gonna gripe about it.
There's gotta be
Yeah.
it's just like the son that said, I'm not going to go out in the field, the next day he does.
Yeah, I think so. Whereas conquered is that you're inwardly. It's all inwardly, and
You're broken.
You're
This
broken.
guy's not broken, and that
Yeah.
guy's broken.
I think conquered means you're broken.
Capitulated.
What's that?
Capitulated you are.
Wait, and that's a big word. You gotta realize I never got past the 6th grade.
I give up. I
Yeah,
capitulate.
yeah.
Whatever it is, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
I capitulate.
And that I would look at that one as conquered, whereas compliant, a little bit different, is that I'm talking, and what the key there is more the demonstrative. The inward is that you're internalizing it, and you're broke, devastated inside.
Well, I'm thinking this in light of how people respond to God, especially in your life, to well, come to Jesus, and I think God brings, at least Paul, some people at the right-hand corner, at least they're very honest with God. But until you get broken, you're not very useful.
Let's talk about us. Yeah. Where do you see yourself in this?
It's relating to who? God?
In relation to when you and I come to this point, guys, that we feel like we've been duped. Guys, all of us have had times when we realize life is unfair. I have lived my life thus and so, and by golly, it didn't dish out, or I got something in return that is unfair. I got to believe everyone in this room has had to have something like that. What is your response? Are you one that tends to be conquered? Allow yourself to be conquered? Are you in a state of confliction for a period of time where I don't know. I'm inwardly resisting, or inwardly resisting, but yet
I think there's
yeah.
How long can you be conflicted? How long are you going to fight this situation that you don't have any control of? And I think for me, just kind of thinking back in my own history is,
Yeah.
you know, you can only fight the situation so long, but, you know, what is God doing in this situation? Does God have another plan? for me?
Okay.
Does he have another road for me to walk? And, you know, that little exercise we had us do, we were looking at our history, what was going on. We had the
Yeah,
highs,
yeah.
We had the lows, we had the highs, we had the lows. And at the end of that little exercise, I was, thank you, Lord, for what you're doing in my life, what you've done in my life, how you took what was, for me, a disaster,
Uh-huh.
and you turned it into a good thing. And, you know, we can only stay in that disaster for so long, or it'll, I suppose it'll kill you. You tend to gravel in it, you gotta go on with life.
Uh-huh.
And, God has a plan for us, no matter what we may think. No, God's plan didn't work here. No, God's plan is for you to follow me, and if we have to go through a low spot, we'll go through that low spot, but I'm still here.
Well, how easy, that's great, Carl, but how easy has that been?
Yeah, there's, that is, it's tough times. But, God.
Okay, somebody else. Yeah, Jim.
One of Jesus' parables is, he talks, you know, if the Roman guard came by and said, you will carry my armor for a mile. He says, carry it for 2 miles. And the difference is, the law was that you were supposed to carry that for a mile. And according to the Eastern ruling around it, most of the guys around, they knew what a mile from their farm was in any
Yeah.
direction, and that's where they'd
Yeah.
throw that armor down, and they had fulfilled the law. Jesus said, carry it too, because you go from being the victim to being victorious, because
See,
you
Mike.
have surrendered this second mile, you have given it to them, and you've totally, can't possibly understand
Uh-huh.
that you have given them more than they had asked for,
Uh-huh.
and turned out to be victorious through the situation.
But what, that's a great example, but what is behind that? How, and what's behind that idea?
Who's really?
That's it. It's the grace and the power of the Lord. I want to give a personal example.
Yeah.
At home one day, my wife and daughter, my daughter when she was 15, they'd been at a swim meet in Estes Park. They came down, said they wanted to visit, talk to me. Sat down on the floor, and my 15-year-old daughter looked at me and said, "Daddy, I'm pregnant." I'll tell you, man, right now, if it had not been for the grace and power of the Lord, right then, right there, at that moment, had I not been conquered by His grace, I don't know what course life would have taken.
Wow.
My first words to my daughter were, "I love you." And we went from there, rather than any other direction that could have happened with that. It's a very simplified story, but I do think that's the key. As men, we don't like to be conquered. Because by gosh, I'm in charge, you know? And that's where we get in trouble, because the Lord does need to conquer us at times. We need to yield to Him, because ultimately, He, through His love and power of the Holy Spirit, is the only one that can really fix something that's really screwed up. And the sooner we recognize that and yield to that, the more He is glorified and the easier our life becomes.
Can I add to that? Please. I got, you know, Eugene Peterson had a book.
Thank you, David.
The Way of Jesus that comes back, and I agree with you. And the problem is we can take 2 branches, we can either make God our co-pilot and have Him line up with our wishes. And so this is ask the question, what would Jesus do, when actually internalize, what would I do with Jesus' support?
That's my co-pilot.
My co-pilot. Or go the direction, how would Jesus do it, which is the key of a lot of things, which He comes to God, He conquers you, He he directs the matter, he directs the character, and he's in charge of the outcome. But as soon as we try to direct the outcome, we will take, I mean, we can be real bastards if we put God on our side, meld it with our wishes, and create a creature that God never intended to be. And we've done that too many times. And you're right, a broken person, broken me and God, how do you want me to do this? Is a wonderful, wonderful solution.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Thanks, Bill. Bob?
Jesus taught his disciples and taught us to pray, and he included in the prayer, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." It seems like what he's calling for is a surrendered attitude, a surrendered life that drives us when we're put into these situations, drives us into what are your kingdom values and what is your will that I'm called on to demonstrate as a follower.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. When do you think, just one last, when do you think in Jesus is our example, guys, there's just no question. When Jesus was facing the cross, what comes to your mind when you think of what was the demonstration that he was conquered, that he allowed himself to be conquered? I thought of it when you...
Yeah, not my will. It was it.
Yeah.
He
Oh
said-
God, if there be any other way, yet not my will. Man, guys, man, the garden,
Yeah, exactly.
that's, I'm doing it. I'm moving ahead. I'm gonna.
He moved from the upper right-hand box to the lower left-hand box.
Yeah, he was, yeah. I think so, Bill. Yes, it was a struggle. The garden scene is not a pretty in-control scene. He's dealing with major issues. But when it comes right down to it, he chose there, not my will, but thy be done. Wow.
Which means he had a will independent of God.
Oh, the mystery of the God-man, if you will,
Is he
is never better demonstrated than in the garden.
Yeah, that's
So guys, we gotta wrap up, but I wanted us to look at this moment, this juncture where we realize in our lives, I've been duped. Life is not fair. I've done thus, and thus. I don't deserve this. I deserve more. We all experience that. And what is our initial response? Thanks for sharing that personal example, Dave. Really appreciate it. It's helpful to all
I
of us.
wish I had been so responsive in many other situations.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll just continue believing you're perfect. Okay? Have a good rest of the week, guys. We'll see you next week.
Guys, I also think this points to Proverbs 32.